Each year, Microsoft Research hosts hundreds of influential speakers from around the world, including leading scientists, renowned experts in technology, book authors, and leading academics, and makes videos of these lectures freely available.
All right, welcome everybody. My name is Bob Tebow. I'm a Senior Solution Manager with TWC. Welcome to today's training on the Microsoft Online Safety Standards and Procedures. So, as it says up there, why the Microsoft Online Safety Standards and Procedures? The standards and procedures provide a way for us to consistently provide a safer and more enjoyable internet, which sounds kind of strange when you think about it, because I'm kind of stumbling. All right, so sorry, I usually don't get morning nerves. That's right. So it's a way for us to provide consistent coverage on our products and services, so that when a consumer goes from one service to the next, they aren't confused by, why is this okay on one side, why is it different on another? We want to have a level of consistency. And it provides guidance to teams, especially new teams as they're coming along. A lot of us in this room have got experience with doing online safety work for years now, but for new teams as they come on board, this is all brand new stuff to them, and sometimes it's confusing. They don't necessarily understand why they're being asked to do this. And so they're looking for guidance on how to do it. So the the Microsoft Online Safety Standards and Procedures is a living document. It's one that, while we have it now in its current form, it will go through a regular updating process. And as we have new issues that come up, as we have new areas of coverage that need to be addressed, it will be updated to do those, much in the same way we do with our privacy standard. So it's designed to help users find the information they need. This is an actual screenshot of the standard. It's divided into 5 distinct sections at this time. The first one is a terminology section. I'm not going to really go into that too much today because most of you, I think, know the terminology. There will be at points where some of the terms that come up, there'll be little things that appear, little snippets of information to help you understand what that is. But I think, for the most part, it's self-evident. If, however, I miss something, please feel free to ask. I'm happy to explain. We're going to do filtering user-generated names. This is a common one that we tend to deal with for any kind of product or service that allows people to choose usernames. It allows them to choose, like Microsoft Accounts, for example, uses email addresses. They have to do this sort of thing to provide a more enjoyable environment for everyone. Codes of conduct. Many people are aware of terms of use, or they're aware of a EULA, but some people aren't aware of what a code of conduct for. What is it? When is it needed? Why do we have it? We also are going to have abuse report handling. So if somebody says, hey, there's some bad behavior going on in this environment with this product or service, how are we set up to properly address that, and we're set up to properly mediate that? And then finally, child pornography, which is obviously a very sensitive subject. It's very challenging sometimes to even talk about because it can be uncomfortable, but it's something that we have to realize is a real problem that exists with internet products and services, and so we have to make sure we moderate it. It doesn't take long to get comfortable with the Microsoft Online Privacy Standard or the Microsoft Online Safety Standards and Procedures. My mistake. It's not a huge document at this point in time. I don't think it will ever necessarily get to be as big as the privacy standard, but that doesn't mean it's any less important. The nice thing is, because of the brevity of it at this point, it's relatively easy to consume and understand, and also the way it's laid out. So the core concepts of it, customers have to have a safe and trusted online experience. So what does safety mean? Does it mean we're the internet police? No. Think of it more as we're kind of trying to provide security. And the reason I say this is because we clearly can't control what goes on the internet. I have, in fact, seen people write in to Microsoft and say, well, you guys control the internet, and here's something going on in this third-party site, and I don't like it. I need you to take care of it. Clearly, we can't do anything about that. But what we can do is in our part of the internet, in our products and services, we can take steps to try to make things enjoyable, to make them feel safer, to make them feel more welcome, to make it feel like a place that they want to be at. In addition, the potential harm to users, there's also the risk of damaging Microsoft's reputation. The goal should always be to increase the level of trust people have with our products and services. Some of the behavior that can go on can just make it an environment that people just don't feel like they want to trust their information with. They don't feel like they want to have their children on. They don't feel like they want to spend time themselves on. And this is all about trying to make it so when they see a Microsoft-branded product, there is a level of trust that they feel comfortable going on to and spending their time, spending potentially their money. It's also important to remember that this is a diverse products and services group and audience that we play to. It's not just US-centric. So there are cultural, societal issues. There are economic and geopolitical issues that we often have to take into account. Over the years that I've worked with this, we've often seen instances where things that, if we look at them only from a perspective of Redmond in the US, it seems perfectly fine. But understanding that different people in different parts of the world have different views on these things, we want to make sure that we moderate appropriately. And these standards and procedures apply to all Microsoft services that allow for that collect or host user-generated content, whether or not they are hosted on Microsoft servers or whether or not they are hosted on a vendor on our behalf. But what about third-party services? What if we are hosting something on behalf of someone else, for example, with Azure? These don't apply to the services that operate on behalf of, that Microsoft operates on behalf of other companies, where they have their own rules and everything else. So sometimes this creates a little confusion, but it's if you just think of it as, is this Microsoft's property? Oops. Is this Microsoft's property whether or not we are in fact hosting it ourselves or paying somebody to do it, then these apply. And user-generated content includes any content or information that a user can create that is posted publicly or shared. So for example, images, photos, you can see special offers, applications, comments, text, location-based information. There's all kinds of information. A lot of times people just think of, oh, if it's just a comment form or if it's just allowing them to post pictures or videos. Jody. Oh, hold on a second. He's going to bring a microphone up to you.
I'm Jody from Xbox.
Yeah.
I have a question about applications. So in the previous slide, you talked about third parties aren't within the scope of the policy. Are you talking about apps that don't go through the certification process, like some other app, or are you also including cert apps, like store apps, for example?
Well, they're going to be apps that we create that are our products and services. What's that?
That's not, sorry, let me back up. The scenario is I'm Netflix.
Yeah.
I have a Microsoft certified app that goes through our store that we ingest and display to customers. Is that covered by UGC, our policy?
No. Kim wants to answer that.
So if third parties are putting applications on our stores, then they are covered. So what that means by covered, though, it means that through that store, that marketplace, there needs to be a code of conduct that tells people who are putting applications up there what's appropriate. And then there needs to be a place for people who are using that marketplace to say, I had this app I felt was inappropriate. So it's not within the application telling them how they need to deal with user-generated content, it's treating the application itself as user-generated content. I know that's kind of tricky. So So it's not telling a third-party app that they have to, what kind of content or how that they have to have a code of conduct, or that they have to handle abuse reporting in a certain way. But what it is saying is that if somebody comes to our marketplace and they find an app that they feel does not meet the standards for that marketplace, because we say within our marketplaces what's okay, that they can complain and say, I found this app that I thought was inappropriate or was violating the code of conduct that you had for your marketplace. And that would tell us we should take down that app from our marketplace. Okay?
Yeah. So that kind of gives you a summary of really what the purpose of the the privacy Microsoft Online Safety Standards and Procedures is about. Let me open it up real quick, see if anybody else has any questions. No? Oh, okay. Let's see. Kim will get you a microphone.
Yeah, on the previous slide, can you give me an example of location-based information, UGC, that we would be worried about? I mean, just an example.
Well, for example, if I was on an internet forum that was hosted by Microsoft, for example, and you and I were having a discussion, and maybe I was upset at something that you had said, or I'm just a jerk, I can't post your location information if there was a way that I could find that out. I'm not allowed to do that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but it's not a technology-based thing then. It's kind of like a...
No, it's not,
like
yeah.
a comment. I mean, like they could just make a comment, so it sort of kind of falls in that category too. I was thinking, like, is it something about what's attached to a picture, or, something else that could be generated in some fashion?
Right. No, from an online safety standpoint, what you find sometimes is if you go through internet services that allow people to interact, you will see from time to time where people get into flame wars, right? They're battling with each other. Or somebody comes in and says something incredibly stupid, and everybody gangs up on them. It's like blood in the water, and they're sharks attacking. And all of a sudden, people will start posting, like, here's where this person lives, here's their address, here's their phone number, here's where they work. It becomes like this insane scenario that goes on. The code of conduct is really going to stop that from happening. Code of conduct is what's going to, because we're going to forbid that, is going to give us the power and authority to come in and say, and take that content down, because it's not a safe environment at that point. And it's unreasonable for one to expect that would be an acceptable form of interaction on that forum. That yes, maybe this person said something that was either really dumb or maybe even inciting the anger of the crowd. That doesn't mean that they necessarily should become the victim of some sort of online bloodbath, witch hunt. Yeah, I was going to say witch hunt, but you did it for me.
I think it's more about the location.
So you think it's also would be the location of the posting?
This is where we get into this is a pilot, and we normally wouldn't talk about this, but
yeah.
I think that the confusion here is that we're talking about types of user-generated content. And what it sounds like from your explanation is that location-based information might be included in a comment. So it's not that it's a unique type of user-generated content. It is a substance within a posting that somebody might type up. So it may be that we shorten this list.
Or even just bring examples into it, right? So it might be a good way to illustrate this is to say, here's an example of a image, photos, videos that went bad, and here's how it ties back to our policy. Here's an app, things like that.
So we need to add some inappropriate content to the training. So, so some slightly inappropriate stuff, but no, I think that's probably fair.
I think it's. I mean, I think in a case like this for the photos, like you can illustrate that simply with something that we'd talked with for years back in the Windows Live and MSN days, which was when people upload a photo, it's not uncommon for, especially photos from mobile phones, mobile devices, that it may have GPS coordinates associated with it. And what's the best way to handle that? In some cases, that's very usable. For example, a product like PhotoSynth, it actually uses those GPS coordinates to create the synth so that when somebody goes and sees, like, say, the Space Needle or the Eiffel Tower, as they move around, it geolocates those photos so they can see from this position on the ground, this is what you would see. However, if I'm taking pictures of my son outside his school, I don't necessarily want the picture to go up with the GPS coordinates where it's like, oh, here's my son at his school, so now somebody can look at them and go, oh, I know where this kid goes to school now. So I think there's a way that we can illustrate that without necessarily getting too saucy. But that was a great question. Thank you. Nicholas, you have a question?
I was just wondering if the bar that we set for what is appropriate content and what is inappropriate depends on the app or the application that is presented in. So could I speak about birth control methods on a medical site, a forum, but I could not on a site designed for children, for instance?
I think absolutely. I think the sites have the capability of determining what's appropriate for them, for their audience and stuff. And I also think that it may be, that the site chooses to say, look, when you're talking about this, this is not in context with what the subject is. You see people do that all the time. There are people who will inject totally non sequitur arguments in at any given time on any given thread because that's, for whatever the reason, their passion or they're just trying to stir things up. I think the example I gave of the photo was actually a very good illustration of that because in one site, under one context, the GPS coordinates attached to the photos are relevant and necessary for the service, but on another site, they may not be. And so we have to decide, we have to take it on a case-by-case basis because just because they're not necessarily relevant for me to have the GPS coordinates attached to the photos of my son in front of his school, does that mean that we put a hard line and we say they can't be there, or is it better to put up a notice to allow people to make the choice for themselves? I think that's oftentimes up for the business to decide what's best.
And if there is that sort of idea of relevance and the site and appropriateness on the site, would that extend not only from user-generated content but also to advertising? Could advertising break these same rules because the ad is inappropriate for that particular site? And not just it's irrelevant because it's a car ad on a medical site, but if it's a dating ad on a child's app, for instance, would that be considered the same kind of thing?
I would say yes, because I know that we deal with that from time to time. I know from the experience I've seen, we've had apps that have inappropriate advertisements in them, and the teams are scrambling to make sure that that's adjusted, and they try to keep it relevant. Kim had something to say?
A couple points. We'll get to when we get to the scenarios. One thing about the online safety standards is it is not dictating what the code of conduct needs to be for a given service. So it is saying that codes of conduct need to address the same types of things, but is not. So each service, to a certain extent, can decide what's appropriate and not appropriate for it. So this is really more about saying that a service needs to decide and state a baseline about what's appropriate behavior for that service, and then it needs to have the ability for people to complain and for that to be moderated, right? With a consistent moderation. So it's really more, I would say the more important thing is that you have to state what your expectations are about behavior. You have to enable people who feel that that expectation is not being met to complain, and you need to be able to address it in a consistent manner. The online safety standard, as it is today, is not saying that the company as a whole has a certain level of what's appropriate and what's not appropriate. So it's about enabling people services to state what they feel is appropriate and making sure that customers feel like that's being lived up to. That makes sense? And as far as ads go, this policy does not cover ads because ads aren't considered user-generated content in the scope of this policy. Those same concerns do exist, but they're not addressed by this policy. That make sense? Okay.
Very good. Any other questions? No? Oh, thank you very much. That was some great conversation and some great questions. Thank you.